Paper confetti stuck to my sneakers as I stood at the edge of my parents' backyard, clutching a flimsy name card like it was a joke someone forgot to finish. Seat 27, Madison. All the other place cards were tucked into cute little gold holders on white Chiavari chairs around the long decorated tables. Mine was actually taped, to the back of a metal folding chair parked next to two overstuffed black trash bins and the humming caterer station. Of course. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos? And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us what would you do in this situation? Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. Madison, honey, over here. Mom's voice rang out, bright and fake sweet. I turned to see her, Denise Blake, queen of appearances, waving from the center table under the balloon arch. She wore a pale pink dress that matched the napkins, the cake frosting, even the freaking straws. My sister, Brianna, sat beside her, glowing in a fitted white maternity dress while guests circled, cooing over her baby bump like it was a royalty tour. Mom's eyes flicked from my faded blue dress to the folding chair by the trash and back again. Her lips curved. "We didn't forget you," she called, loud enough for the nearest table to hear. "Madison's seat is over there. She's used to being outside." A few guests laughed, quick, awkward little giggles they tried to swallow but didn't. One woman actually glanced at me with that pitying tilt of the head I hated more than anything. Heat crawled up my neck. I wanted to say something, anything, but my voice locked behind my teeth. I'd promised myself I wouldn't ruin Brianna's day, no matter how petty our mom got. So I did the one thing I'd learned to do in this house. I stayed silent. I walked to the folding chair, tossed my name card onto it, and sat down like it didn't burn. The trash bins to my left smelled like frosting, plastic wrap, and something sour underneath. A server squeezed past me carrying a tray of pink mocktails. "Sorry," he muttered. "They told us this was the staff corner." "Story of my life," I said, forcing a smile. From here, I had a perfect view of the party I wasn't really part of. Pastel streamers, a giant baby girl sign, a dessert table with macarons arranged in the shape of a carriage. Everyone had a seat at the main tables, cousins, neighbors, business partners from my parents' company, except me. "Madison, bring over those extra favors, will you?" Mom shouted, like I was hired help instead of her oldest daughter. I got up without arguing, carried the box to the dessert table, and tried not to flinch when Brianna barely looked at me. "Make sure everyone important gets one," Mom added. "Investors first. Investors." That word landed differently for me now. 2 months ago, I'd been cleaning software bugs at a tiny startup by day and freelancing as a data analyst at night. One of those freelance gigs belonged to a man none of my family knew I worked with, a man whose last name could make half this guest list sit up straighter. A man named Grayson Hale. It started as a rushed report, one midnight Zoom, a mess of numbers I organized until the chaos made sense. He liked my work, hired me again, then again. And somewhere between spreadsheets, he'd asked the one question no one in this backyard had ever bothered with. "Madison, what do you want to build?" I'd stuttered, laughed it off. But he'd listened. Actually listened. Now, as my mother treated me like a server at my sister's baby shower, my phone buzzed in the pocket of my dress. Unknown number. I stepped behind a column of balloons and answered. "Hello. Madison? It's Grayson." His voice was smooth, clipped, used to boardrooms and deadlines. My heart jumped.
"Hi.
Sorry, it's a little loud. I'm, at a family thing." "I won't keep you," he said. "I'm 10 minutes out. Are we still on?" I froze. The backyard suddenly felt too bright, too small. Our meeting. We'd planned this last week, but I'd almost convinced myself he'd cancel. Powerful men didn't come to the suburbs for people who sat by trash bins. "Yeah," I breathed. "We're on." "Good," he said. "There's something I want to discuss, face to face." "And Madison?" "Yeah. You sounded different on our last call. If this isn't a good time, if you're dealing with something, I can always reschedule." I looked back at the scene. Mom laughing with a cluster of men in suits, the same men who ran Blake Outdoor Supply with my dad since I'd been old enough to file invoices for them. Brianna opening gift after gift while guests snapped pictures. My lonely folding chair beside the trash. "No," I said. "This is perfect." We hung up. My pulse hammered so loud I could barely hear the baby shower game starting. "Okay, everyone." Mom clapped her hands, grabbing a microphone my dad had set up like this was a press conference. "Before we start, I just want to thank our partners and investors for believing in us all these years. Today is about family and legacy." Her gaze slid right past me like I was air. "Madison, can you collect the wrapping paper later?" she added into the mic, getting another round of chuckles. I gripped a paper cup until it crumpled. Legacy. They never said it out loud, but I knew the truth. Brianna was the golden daughter who would marry well and be the perfect smiling face of their brand. I was the clutter they'd shoved into the attic years ago. Too stubborn, too opinionated, too me. The rumble of an engine rolled down the quiet cul-de-sac, low and expensive sounding. Conversations dipped, then shifted as heads turned toward the driveway. A sleek black Rolls-Royce glided to a stop outside the open gate. Everything paused. Even the balloon arch seemed to hold its breath. "Wow," one of the investors muttered behind me. "Looks like you've got some serious new money showing up, Blake." Mom's spine straightened. She smoothed her dress and whispered something to my dad, who was already checking his tie in the reflection of a sliding glass door. "Oh my gosh," Brianna breathed, hand on her belly. "Do you think that's for the company?" "Dad, did you invite someone?" "I might have a surprise," Dad said, bluffing like he always did.
He had no idea.
The driver stepped out first, suited, professional. He walked around and opened the rear door. Grayson Hale unfolded from the back seat like a man who knew the world moved out of his way. Dark gray suit, white shirt, no tie. Tall, mid-30s, sharp jaw, the kind of blue eyes that didn't miss anything. Whispers rippled through the crowd. "Is that? It can't be." Oh my. I just stood there, my heart in my throat, because seeing him in a grainy Zoom rectangle and seeing him step into my parents' backyard were two very different things. He scanned the crowd once, quick, assessing. Then his gaze landed on me. Not on my mother with her perfect hair. Not on my sister in her curated white dress. On me. Standing near the trash bins with a crushed paper cup in my hand. The corner of his mouth lifted. "Madison," he called, like we were the only two people in the world. Dozens of heads swiveled toward me. Mom's smile faltered. You know him?" she whispered to my dad, eyes sharp. Grayson walked straight past the decorated dessert table, past the investors and relatives shifting in their seats, and stopped in front of me. Up close, he smelled like subtle cologne and city air, not like the backyard and recycled small talk. "You look like you're exactly where they want you," he said quietly, eyes flicking to the folding chair by the trash. "And nowhere close to where you belong." Heat stung my eyes. I blinked it away. "Grayson, this is..." He didn't let me finish. Instead, in full view of everyone, he extended his hand. "Ready to go?" he asked, voice perfectly calm. A collective murmur rolled through the tables. Someone dropped a fork. Brianna's mouth fell open. Mom shot to her feet. "Excuse me," she said, laugh trembling. "Mr. Hale, I'm Denise, Madison's mother." "We're so honored." He didn't look at her. I stared at his hand. At the thousands of times I'd swallowed my pride in this yard. At the smirks, the digs, the quiet decisions to treat me like an outsider in my own family. If I took his hand, I knew I wouldn't be able to go back to pretending any of this was okay. I slid my fingers into his. "Yeah," I said, my voice steady at last. "I'm ready."
Gasps.
Someone actually choked on their drink. Grayson's grip was firm but gentle as he led me toward the gate. "Behind us," Mom sputtered. "Madison, where do you think you're going?" "This is your sister's shower." I paused at the edge of the patio and looked back. Every eye was on me, Mom furious, Dad confused, Brianna stunned, investors curious. For the first time in my life, I said, "I'm going somewhere I'm wanted." We stepped out through the open gate. As the driver closed the Rolls-Royce door behind us, I heard the distant echo of my mother's voice, high and panicked as her phone started ringing on the table. She answered it on speaker by mistake. Denise Blake, a clipped voice said, "This is regarding your company's primary investment agreement with Hale Equity Partners. We need to talk. Right now." The last thing I saw before the tinted window slid up was my mother's face draining of color as every investor at her precious party turned toward her. The engine purred. I leaned back against the leather seat, my heart pounding. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like the girl sitting by the trash. I felt like the one who'd just stepped into the beginning of her revenge. The soft hum of the Rolls-Royce filled the silence between us as the gates closed behind the chaos I'd just left. I caught my reflection in the tinted window, same blue dress, same trembling hands, but my eyes looked different.
Alive.
Grayson glanced at me, reading the storm behind my quiet. "You didn't tell me today was a party," he said with a hint of amusement. "Didn't plan on crashing it," I muttered, still hearing Mom's shrill voice echoing in my head. "You didn't crash anything," he said simply. "You outgrew it." We drove through tree-lined streets, sunlight flashing over his watch, his jawline set with the kind of focus that made men like my father scramble to impress. But he wasn't saying much, and for once, neither was I. My whole life, I'd learned to bite my tongue. Today, silence felt like control. Finally, he broke it. "You handled that better than I expected." "You mean not throwing the cake at my mom?" I said. He chuckled, low, genuine. "Something like that. Though, for the record, I wouldn't have stopped you." That made me laugh, really laugh. It felt strange, like air after drowning. We pulled into the private drive of Hale Enterprises' downtown office tower, glass and steel rising like a monument to everything my parents worshipped but never let me touch. Inside, an assistant met us with a nod and led us to the top floor. The elevator doors opened to a panoramic view of the city. Grayson gestured for me to sit across a sleek oak desk scattered with project files and, to my surprise, one with my name typed across the top. Madison Blake, Data Operations Lead, pending. I blinked. Pending. He leaned forward. "Not anymore. I've been waiting to see how you handle pressure. I saw the way you kept your head today, even with people trying to tear you down. That's the kind of person I trust to run something important." I stared at him, heartbeat quickening. "You mean?" "Yes," he said. "I want you on my team.
Full-time.
Starting Monday." It took a second for the words to sink in. For so long, every success I'd had was hidden behind someone else's name, my mom's, my dad's, my sister's. But this was mine. "Why me?" I asked softly. He smiled. "Because you don't pretend. And because I like watching people who were underestimated prove the world wrong." My throat tightened. "You just gave my mother a heart attack, you know." He laughed again. "Oh, about that. My team has officially withdrawn all investment offers from Blake Outdoor Supply. They'll get the call from corporate by this afternoon." I blinked, stunned. "Wait, that means—" "It means they'll finally understand what happens when you treat people like they're disposable," he said calmly. "Don't worry. It's not revenge, just business." But deep down, I knew it was revenge. Perfect, poetic, karma-level justice. My phone buzzed on the desk, Mom's name flashing across the screen. Then Dad's. Then Brianna's. One after another, the people who had treated me like I was invisible suddenly couldn't stop calling. I let it ring. Grayson stood, offering a small smile. "You should see your new office." He led me to the glass wall overlooking the skyline. "Everything from this floor down reports to you. And one more thing, your first task." I turned to him, still reeling. "What is it?" He nodded toward a folder labeled Blake Reacquisition Analysis. "If they reach out for help," he said, "you decide whether to save them or let them sink." Outside, the afternoon sun turned the city gold. I smiled, steady now, sure of every word. Then let's make them watch what success looks like without them. And for the first time in years, I felt proud to be Madison Blake. By the next morning, my name was everywhere. Press headlines flashed across my phone screen before I'd even finished my coffee. Hale Enterprises appoints Madison Blake as division lead. Blake Outdoor Supply faces investor pullout. Future uncertain. My mom always wanted our family name in headlines. She just didn't expect it like this. I arrived at the office early, hair tied back, nerves replaced by a pulse of quiet adrenaline. Grayson had already warned me that the day would be chaotic. Reporters calling, analysts digging for dirt, old contacts suddenly remembering my number. But I didn't expect the knock on my glass door before noon. Madison? The voice I'd known my whole life suddenly sounded smaller.
Mom.
She stepped in slowly, like she wasn't sure she belonged there. Gone was the pastel dress and perfect hair. She wore dark sunglasses and the kind of expression that didn't know how to hide regret. Your assistant said I could come in, she murmured. I folded my laptop closed. You didn't have to ask permission, Mom. You never did before. Her eyes flicked around the office. The glass walls, the skyline, the expensive simplicity of everything. This is yours? I nodded. Grayson promoted me yesterday. Her lips trembled just slightly. You're working with him? Technically, for him.
But yes.
She sank into the chair opposite me like she'd been hit by gravity. For the first time in my life, Denise Blake didn't look like she was running the room. We didn't mean to, she began. Yes, you did. I interrupted softly. You meant every comment, every smirk, every she's used to being outside. You built your pride on who sat closest to the table. And I was just the empty chair. She flinched. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. I said, my voice steady but sharp enough to cut through the air. You made me feel like nothing for years. But it's okay, Mom. Because that's exactly what pushed me to become something. Her shoulders dropped. We lost everything, Madison. The investors backed out. Your father should have treated people better, I finished. Maybe then he wouldn't have to beg for second chances. She looked down at her hands. We're trying to rebuild. We can't do it without help. There it was, the real reason she came. Not for me. For rescue. I leaned back in my chair, the leather creaking softly. So, you want me to convince Grayson to reinvest? Her silence was answer enough. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the cracks behind the arrogance. The fear. The realization that all the things she valued, money, reputation, power, could vanish in one night. I'll think about it, I said. But not because you're my mother. Because I don't want anyone's employees losing jobs over pride. Tears welled in her eyes, catching her by surprise. Madison, I never thought you'd be the one sitting here. Neither did you, I said. That's the problem. She stood to leave, her composure barely holding. At the door, she turned. Brianna's having the baby soon. She'd like to see you. I hesitated, then nodded. Tell her I'll come. When she left, the room felt lighter, like a weight had finally been set down. Grayson walked in a moment later, file in hand. You handled that well, he said. I didn't do it for her, I replied. I did it for me. He smiled. Good answer. I looked out the window, the city glowing under a sky that suddenly felt endless. For years, I'd been the girl sitting by the trash bins, holding back tears. Now I was the woman deciding who got a seat at my table. 2 weeks later, I stood at the center of a ballroom filled with the sound of champagne glasses and soft jazz. The same venue my family once used for their company parties, except this time, I wasn't serving canapés or collecting trash bags. I was the one whose name was printed on the invitation. Hale Enterprises welcomes Madison Blake, launch of Horizon Analytics. Reporters filled the edges of the room, investors circled, and somewhere between all that, I caught sight of my reflection in the mirrored wall. Confident posture, tailored cream suit, eyes calm but sharp. I almost didn't recognize her. Grayson approached with that easy confidence he carried like a shadow. Everything's ready. Your moment, Madison. I thought I'd never have one, I said quietly. He smiled. That's the thing about people like you don't wait for moments. You make them. Before I could answer, a familiar voice cut through the crowd. Madison. I turned, My father, Robert Blake, walking toward me with Mom trailing behind him. Brianna, round from pregnancy but glowing, followed with hesitant steps. The entire family that once made me feel small now stood under chandeliers paid for by the company that chose me instead of them. "Dad," I said, polite, distant. He exhaled, nervous. "Your mother told me what you've done here. Madison, I was wrong. We both were. We didn't see what you were capable of." Mom nodded, eyes glistening. "We're proud of you, honey." The words might have meant something once, but not tonight. Behind me, Grayson placed a hand lightly at my back, not claiming me, just reminding me I didn't have to face them alone. "Madison, your speech is up," he said softly. I stepped up to the podium, feeling hundreds of eyes shift in my direction.
My palms didn't shake this time.
"Some of you might remember me as the girl who sat at the far edge of the table," I began, voice steady, clear. "Sometimes beside the trash bins, sometimes not invited at all." A few guests chuckled, not knowing how literal I meant it. But tonight, I want to thank the people who taught me what being overlooked really means, because it made me build something no one could ignore. Applause erupted, warm, honest. Cameras flashed. I saw my mom lower her eyes, my father's shoulders tighten, and Brianna wipe away a tear. I smiled. We rise higher not by proving others wrong, but by proving ourselves right. Grayson caught my gaze from the front row, giving a small nod, the kind that said you did it. After the event, as guests mingled and reporters swarmed, Brianna approached quietly. "Madison," she whispered, "I don't know what Mom said that day, but I'm sorry for laughing. You didn't deserve that." I looked at her, my little sister, caught in a life built from the same toxic pride I'd just escaped. "Take care of your baby," I said softly. "Teach her to treat people better than we were taught." She nodded, eyes wet. Grayson joined me as the crowd thinned. "You okay?" he asked. "Better than okay," I said. "I finally have a seat that's mine." He smiled. "Not just a seat, a company, a legacy." I looked toward the exit, where my parents stood quietly watching, unsure whether to approach or leave. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger, just peace. They could keep their balloon arches and picture-perfect parties. I had something real now, respect, freedom, and a future built by my own hands. As Grayson led me toward the elevator, flashes from cameras followed us, like a trail of light. Once upon a time, I sat by the trash bins. Now I was walking beside a billionaire, not because of luck, but because I finally stood up and took my own place at the table.